Jump ahead before we get there. But Genesis chapter 1, verse number 26. The Bible says, "And God said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the flesh of the sea, fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, over the cattle, over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him, male and female created he them." So if there's a single issue that's prevalent in our society today that is profoundly confused, it's gender identity. It is rapidly growing and becoming a huge topic and a huge discussion, argument, debate in our culture, in our nation. And as Christians, hopefully just based on the two verses we read alone, you know where you stand. Right, you know where you stand when it comes to gender identity, and we need to know where we stand. But there's obviously confusion over gender identity. There's also confusion over things like tolerance and acceptance and love and marriage. I mean, all those things that we just assume are understood, that we understand, and hopefully are assuming our children understand, is not understood by the majority of our culture where we live and the majority of our world. So we need to make sure as parents, as grandparents, as influencers of children, that we are solid on what we believe and that we transfer that down to the next generation. That our teenagers understand, that our toddlers understand, and as they grow and as we bring new babies into this world, 20 years from now, if things progress as they have been, it's not going to be better, most likely. So the brand new babies that are being born in 15 years when they're teenagers, what will be the culture? What will be the expectation? And what will they have to fight against? What will they have to deal with? And so we want to make sure as parents, as guardians, that we are training them and teaching them and giving them truth and giving them God's word. So God's created design, though, has been turned upside down. And in the process, confusion has come. And we know who the author of confusion is. It is not God, it is the devil. So there are many today that have been brought up in a world heavily influenced by LGBT agenda. And many have never had a clear explanation of biblical truth. I mean, if you think about kids whose parents don't have anything to do with church or just don't have parents in general that are in their lives, whatever they're told by the outside forces, they've unlikely been told the truth. And so it's not too surprising that the kids as they grow up, that the percentages of more of them struggling with it is going to go higher, because truth is not given to them. So we talked about this multiple times in this lesson series, but there's a war, the spiritual warfare. And it's for the hearts and the minds of our children, right? And for the bodies of our children. And that's the world. Every human being is made in God's image. That's for the children of the world. That's for our children specifically. It's for the children of this church. There's a battle for their hearts, for their minds, for everything. And the attack on family, I mean, that's where it begins. It's the attack on the family unit, and that attack is satanic, and it has plagued societies for centuries. Now, we are not the first society to struggle with this. It has happened in history over and over and over again. The problem is every society that has gone down this path, it has ended poorly every single time. From Sodom and Gomorrah in your Bible to Rome to Greece, to our world today, every society that has gone down this path has ended in destruction. So sexual perversion and confusion is a way to break up God's design for family and the roles that he created for human beings. And the devil knows that. And it's a blatant attack on God when the devil goes after kids. I mean, abortion is the same way. It's a blatant attack on Jesus when they go after babies. So going to the gender issue or gender identity issue, there's a foundation of a God-given identity, right? Gender identity issues are so significant today because they're at the core of who we are as people, who we are as individuals. A biblical view of sexuality recognizes two vital truths. Men and women are equal in God's image, but men and women are diverse in their physical design. And it's basic, right? It's basic biology, it's basic understanding, but it is, when you have debates online of what a woman is, it just boggles my mind. The definitions cannot be given. It's obvious that there's agendas there. So first, it starts off equal in God's image. Every human being is equal in God's image, male or female. There is no One's better, one's superior, one's inferior. Men and women are equal. God gave Adam and Eve the same human nature, right? There's no difference in who they are as humans. The fact that they were both created in God's image set man and women above the animal kingdom, right? Giving them differing worth and dignity than all the rest of creation. And we see that there in verse number 26, how God set man over everything else, right? So there's value and dignity and worth there that God didn't give to everything else, right? So the image of God, it just means we have intellect, we have emotion, we have will, we have moral sense, volition, understanding, the ability to reason, and an eternal soul with the capability of communicating with God. That is one thing humans have that no other part of creation has. Unfortunately, your dogs probably aren't going to be in heaven in the way that you hope they will be, right? That's just not, God has created human beings differently. And when we understand that and accept that, that's where it begins. That's where your view and perspective on humanity begins, which trickles down into children and sexuality and everything that goes along with being a human being. All begins with God created humans in his image, and we are equal as human beings. Right? So in all these ways that are mentioned there, men and women are the same. Intellect, spiritual rights, abilities, responsibilities to God. Men and women are absolutely equal in all those areas. Both stand in the same need of salvation. Right? Men and women are equal in that way as well. Galatians 3:28 says, there is neither Jew nor Greek, there is neither bond nor free, there is neither male nor female, for you're all one in Christ Jesus. This does not mean that there's no distinction between a man and a woman. That's not what this verse is saying, and people will twist the meaning of this verse to say that's what it's saying. But there is no inequality between a man and a woman when it comes to their need for Jesus. And that's what this verse is saying. When it comes to their need for salvation, it doesn't matter what your nationality is, what your race is, what your gender is. We all need Jesus the exact same amount. And that's what that verse there means. So we're equal. And that's the beginning foundation, is that men and women are equal in God's eyes in his image. But there's diverseness in physical design, right? Physically, men and women are different, right? Verse 28 continues to talk about men and women being fruitful and multiplying and bringing life into this earth. So that's an affirmation of procreation, which can only happen with a man and a woman, right? That's the only way that it can happen. And it's an affirmation of that marriage between a man and a woman. So God just continues to affirm his plan and his design, and we know that, right? As Christians, we understand that even the newest Christian that just got saved, that logic and that understanding is there, right? And so that's the basis, though, of where everything begins. We are equal, but we're diverse in physical design. We have different roles, right? So that's the foundation. Then it comes to the fight, or this. I guess I get to that there. Equality is not sameness, right? And we won't go into DEI because we don't have the time for all that, right? But being equal is not being the same. There's a difference there. And I think we understand where we stand on that. So that brings us to there's a fight for God-given identity. There's a battle for the basic truths about gender, right? For the kids who are currently in schools, and I understand when I make general statements like this, it doesn't mean it happens in every single case with every single kid, with every single teacher. Hopefully you understand. So if you're like, well, that never happened, and I get it. It's not every time, but it's a majority of the times. But for kids that are in school today, they're being taught one must be accepting of others' claims of gender. It's a constant. I mean, you don't have to watch the news for very long to just see that it's everywhere. You don't have to be involved in schools or have other kids, a family or friends that you know that you hear these things. Even in South Dakota, good old conservative, good people, South Dakota, this is being pushed. So even now, right, that may be that they can reconsider their own view of themselves. And that's a danger of even putting our children subjected to some of these influences, is that kids are easily influenceable, if that's a word. They're easily influenced. Better grammar, right? They're easily influenced. And so when we put them in a position where the other people are just hammering their agenda or their thought process and it's anti-God, they will be influenced by it. At the minimum, it's going to make them question why mom and dad say this and we're taught this, but I hear this here. And hopefully that's good. Questions are okay. But when they start to lean in a different direction that is opposite God, you get hammered over and over with some of that ideas, it's going to affect them. It's going to wear them down. And so you have to be very careful about who you allow to influence your children. And we'll get to that now in a minute. But Gen Z, right? So Gen Z is the 1997 to mid 2010s. 14 years old-ish, and these lines are blurry, I understand. But mid-teenagers to before you're 30. That age group, the percentage of those identifying of something other than how they were born has skyrocketed. And the percentage, like from the boomers to the Gen X's and what all the alphabet that goes, that age group is just spiked. So those that are somewhere between 14 and in their 20s, the percentage of those that are confused, that have unsureness, that have decided they are something different, not sure what they are, has skyrocketed. And there's a correlation between that and the teaching in our schools, between our society, and what was accepted and tolerated, right? It has spiked in that age group recently more than any other. And if that trend continues, it would be safe to say that kids that are even under 14, and then again, the new children that are even born this week, in that time frame, if that trend continues, it's safe to say that will climb even higher. If nothing changes in our society, if nothing changes in the way our school systems operate, if nothing changes, it's just going to continue to get more and more, where there's just more and more confusion, more and more misunderstanding, or just not knowing truth is going to continue. And it shouldn't be a surprise to us. That is how the world is getting worse and worse. It is not getting better. There are pockets of getting better. There are pockets of good things. That's what churches are for. We stand in the middle. We're that light. We're that salt to make a difference. But society as a whole, if God doesn't change society's heart, our culture, even our nation, this trend will continue. And it will affect our kids. It will affect future generations. It'll affect our grandkids. Right? Some of us have kids that are in the home, and we're not thinking about their marriages and their kids. But if God allows, that will progress. Your kids will have kids. Those kids will grow up. You'll hopefully live a long time to see them grow, but they'll have kids. And their lives and their understanding of life and how life should be will be affected on how culture is. So how do we fight that? Right? How do we counter that? That's the goal. We want to counter those attacks. We want to counter that teaching, because it's false. It's literally satanic. So we want to be strong in what we think and aggressive and proactive when it comes to fighting those types of ideas. So, a couple things to go through. The very first thing you can do to help fight against that is avoid ungodly influences. That's the biggest way to prevent yourself and your children from being influenced in that direction. Psalm 1:1 says, "Blessed is the man that walketh not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor standeth in the way of sinners, nor sitteth in the seat of the scornful." Stay away from the influences that are unbiblical, that are opposite of what God is. Again, just because not every public school is bad, not every public school teacher is bad. I understand that. And I know many kids that went through public school and they're fine. They don't think they're a boy if they're a girl, and vice versa. I get that. It's not every single time. But the more influence they're exposed to, the tougher it is. Just period. Plain and simple. It's not a negative thing about the people. It's just facts. It's just logic. 1 Corinthians 15:33-34 says, "Be not deceived. Evil communications corrupt good manners." Like it's a fact. You're around bad behavior. You're around bad influences. It will affect you. "Awake to righteousness and sin not. For some have not the knowledge of God. I speak this to your shame." Where there's influences, we're influenced every day by a lot of different things, whether we want to be or not. It could be subliminal, it could be right in your face, but there are influences that vie for our attention, vie for our time. There are influences that demand our children's attention. Marketers and those that are trying to sell products and ideas target children. There's an age group. That's why Instagram, TikTok, all these viral things target that age group, because they're easily influenced, and when they buy into something, they buy into it. And it's hard to sway them. I mean, if you've had a kid that didn't want to do something or wanted something and they weren't properly trained, I mean, we've all seen kids screaming and kicking in Walmart on the floor, right? That's kids' behavior. That's how they act. So there are some areas of influence that could corrupt our children's understanding of their God-given identity. This by no means encompasses everything, but these are just a few. And they're practical. Fashion and marketing industries. Right, clothing brands can promote ungodly lifestyles. It's a fact. And I don't even necessarily care what they're donating to or their political affiliations. I'm just saying the brands themselves, the clothes themselves, the things of that nature, that industry, the fashion industry, it could care less what God thinks. Right? Whether it's modest, whether it's immodest, whatever fashion show, good or bad, they could care less. Those designers, the marketers could care less what God thinks about clothing. They just don't. You might get lucky and have some good clothing that comes from people that don't care, but the point of the fact is they don't care. Right? It's not just the styles are changing with the times. Right? It's not just, well, back when my grandparents were around, everyone wore hats. Right? They had that cool hat. It was like a newspaper hat or the Newsboys hat. Brother Jim bought one of those when we were on trip, and they're awesome. And I wish I could pull it off. But that was the style, right? They used to wear the hats. They used to wear suits everywhere. Now you could barely get people to wear suits to church, right? I mean, that was the style. That was the way things were. And that is true. Styles change. I mean, if you grew up in the 80s, you hope those pictures don't resurface anytime, right? I understand. Styles change. But the underlying target of fashion industries and marketing industries are, there's an agenda there, especially these days, right? You need to be aware of what your children are wearing. I mean, when they're little, you choose, and they don't really get a choice, right? I doubt when the Spillman girls are in their mid to late teens that they're going to be cool with wearing the same things to Easter Sunday. Now they look adorable, right? And they're great, and they're so cute with their bows and all that, and they match. They're probably going to be a little less apt to be like on board. Who knows? Maybe they'll love it. I don't know. They are your kids, so they may love it, and that's awesome. But when they're little, you get to choose. When they get older, that's part of their identity, right? They start gaining their own identity, and they want to choose what they wear. They want to choose what their hair looks like. They want to choose the things they present themselves as. But as parents, we need to be careful and be aware of what they're trying to present and where they're being influenced on what and why they want to present what they present, right? Be aware of what your children are wearing, especially as they get older, and choose for themselves what to wear. Clothing matters. I mean, Pastor talked about it on Sunday night, and we might talk about that a little bit more here in a bit. But the fashion and marketing industries is an influence. Another influence, maybe the biggest one, is social media. Right, all the exposure to everything you could ever wonder about is available online. Anything, good and bad, right? It's all available. It's at your fingertips. You can find out equations to things that you could never know if you weren't in that industry or weren't a scientist or a mathematician. You can find out equations to stuff, physics things, good stuff. It may not mean anything to you, but you can see what it looks like. You can also find all the bad stuff. You can also find all the dark stuff and all the terrible things, right, that exist as well. And some people might say those equations should fall into that category. My kids would be one of them. But everything you could ever want is available. The trends and agendas are pushed into social media feeds. I mean, if you're on social media, us old folks, and I know there's a line even in here, us old folks that are on Facebook or nothing, and then the younger ones are like, oh, Facebook's such boomers, right? I get it. The Instagram or whatever, the TikToks that are the important, the big things. And I know there's even some now that I don't even know what they are, right? Carter said something that they have, and I'm like, I don't remember the name. I was like, I don't know what that is, but okay. Be Reels, those types of things. But trends and agendas are pushed in social media apps. It's just fact. It's the way it is. They'll push things whether you want it to be there or not. And though our children, if we're not careful, will buy into the lie of being pushed. Well, they'll buy into the lie that is being pushed, right? They'll start to think, well, maybe that's not so bad. That's not so wrong. Those people are people too. And they'll start to go down a thought process that is not biblical. Yes, those people are people too, but sin is sin, right? And we can't accept sin, right? It'll bring up questions on so many just different levels and different subjects. And so you as mom and dad have to be prepared to answer those questions. If you're going to allow your children to be on certain apps and on certain social medias and on the internet in general, I would monitor that. Don't trust anybody. Even your great good kid, don't trust them. Because even if they aren't trying to find something, how often do things find them? They may not even be looking for it, but it could show up, and then you can't. Once an image is in there, you can't take it out. Right? You've experienced things in your lives up to this point. You've seen things, whether intentionally or unintentionally, they're in your mind. You can't get rid of them. You pray God that takes them away, and you don't think about them, and they don't come up, but they're there. And we don't want to expose our kids to those things Because once it's there, it can't come back. You can't take those things back. So be aware, be cautious, overly cautious, like so much that they're like, Mom, yes, that cautious. Their annoyance is not worth, put up with their annoyance over allowing them to be exposed to something that will influence them. But that push and that agenda is there, and those that are looking for it in the culture and the world, they're looking for it, and they're confused already. This is a way for them to just jump on board and be pushed right along that path. And that's part of the problem and part of the reason why it has gotten so big. Another way to be an influence is our entertainment, right? Your movies, your TV is not really what it used to be. I understand that, but the music, the streaming services, all of those entertainment medias push an agenda. You used to be able to trust Andy Griffith, right? You used to be able to trust some of the old after-school TV shows and cartoons. You used to be able to trust all those things that they were safe for kids. But there is even preschool shows today that are pushing two moms. There are preschool shows today that are pushing non-binary characters to 3 and 4-year-olds. You cannot assume anything is good. You have to, as a parent, it's annoying. It's time-consuming and it's frustrating. I shouldn't have to worry about the kids' shows I'm watching, but you do. And so you have to do your due diligence, and you have to make sure that it's safe for kids to watch. But you also have to be careful of your own self. Be careful of the shows that you allow to watch. And man, it's everywhere. I know. If you cut out everything that had it, we probably don't watch much of anything. And maybe that's better. Maybe that's better. Right? Everything you like, eventually, if it progresses, is going to be included. It's going to include something that is anti-God. Right? And it's been subtle, but it's becoming more just out in your face about it, more belligerent about it. Right? The woke agenda, it's added into everything. Every TV show, every movie's got to have something that exists to be inclusive. Right? That's what they say, to be inclusive, but it's not to be inclusive, it's to push an agenda. And we as parents have to be, and sometimes it's going to mean saying no to something you like, which is terrible. And it's not fun. Let's be honest. Something you liked as a kid, you grew up, and now it's being changed, and you just can't be okay with it. And we're all going to be pushed to a point where we have to make a decision. And what's the decision worth? What, your own kid's idea of what's acceptable based on what you allow. And so you start allowing certain things, we're giving opportunities for things to come in that we don't want to come in. So be careful of your entertainment. That's an influence. The last one that I have for today is public education, and I talked about it briefly. But the American public education system is run minus God. It's period, right? We kicked God out of schools decades ago, right? Again, that doesn't mean there's not good teachers. Doesn't mean that there's not good programs. Doesn't mean there's not good kids, and that you can't have good kids come out of public school. I'm not saying that. Okay, so I just want to be clear on that. I went to public school. I turned out mostly fine. Okay, so it's questionable, but anyways, the truth is, the American school system does not care what God thinks as a whole. Right, that's just not how it's run. On every level, from grade school all the way through universities, God is not given any kind of influence into what is being taught, into what is being said, other than maybe if God thinks it will go the other direction. Right? That's probably about as much as God is getting credit in any kind of education system. Again, not to say there aren't good things within them, but they're mainly being used now to, again, push agendas, but not God's agenda. Right? How many times do we see these days a battle over whether or not a pride flag can be displayed in the classroom for second graders? Right? I mean, it's there. There are teachers there that have an agenda, that have been taught an agenda as they grew up, and now they're trying to continue that on to the children that they're teaching. And we have to be careful. If you have kids in public school, just make sure they're heavily involved here. Make sure you're heavily involved in their life. They are fighting for our kids' hearts and minds. Yes, they're going to teach them to read. They're going to teach them, hopefully, how to add, depending on what schools you go to. That's debatable on whether they're learning those things or not. But they're pushing for our kids' hearts, for our kids' minds, for our kids' understanding of the world. What will we allow them to see and hear and be exposed to in those classrooms? What are we willing to put up with? What are we willing to allow? And we have to ask ourselves those questions. Right? What guidelines will we put that will keep them guarded? Where are we going to put those lines? Right? I'm not saying that everybody should homeschool their kids. I'm not saying that's not the case for everybody. I know that. right? You are in charge and have to make the decision with God's help on how you're going to do your kids and your family. That's up to you. But again, we've got to have boundaries and guidelines set up for our family, for our children, right? It's not just about times are changing, right? And things are getting different. We just have to, well, that's just how it is today, right? We need to be discerning, vigilant, and active when it comes to rearing our kids. It has to be intentional. And I know probably nobody in here is really anywhere close to this being a danger. But again, it's not just even our kids now, it's their kids. And how we train our kids now will affect how your grandkids are trained. How you train your kids today to think, to accept, to be okay with, to not be okay with, will affect how your grandkids are raised. And then you bring in their spouse from wherever they come from, and we don't know the background they had, the upbringing they have had. You know, with your spouse, you both have different ideas on things. And if you came up in similar backgrounds, there's a lot that you would probably agree on, but there are probably things that you both had to decide. Okay, I was this way, I think it's good. I was this way, I think it's good. How do we compromise and make it work for us? So your kids are going to meet somebody, maybe from a different part of the country, maybe from a different country entirely, that was raised differently. And so their view and how kids should be raised is going to be impacted in their marriage and then your grandkids. So make sure your kids are strong in God's word, strong in truth, so that if the person they marry maybe isn't as strong there, truth can still be prevalent in that family, right? It is about our kids, but it's not just about our kids. It's about our grandkids. And it's hard for even us as adults to think that way because we're not, some of you are old enough to be grandkids, some grandparents, some of you are. And that's awesome. And I can't wait for that day now, right? Now that I have a kid in his 20s, I'm like, that would be so cool. I have a baby that I don't have to take home and I can just have the good stuff with and be like, here, it's poopy diaper, you take care of it, right? No, those are silly. But honestly, what a legacy, what an exciting thing. And God knows what he's doing, right? That's awesome to have a grandchild come along and add to your family. What a blessing that is. What a joy that is. So with the kids you have now and wherever you are in your life, they need to know that God's truth is what matters. Not what anybody else says, not what anybody other agenda is pushed and taught, not what the world says, because it's going to become more and more of an outcast and an outlier to stand for truth. To stand for, no, men and women are different, and there's a reason for that. That is going to become more of a hate speech type attitude. And we have to be willing to stand for truth so that our kids will do it and so that our grandkids will also be brought up that way. So these are areas of influence. There are others. Whatever you can come up with other ideas and things that will influence you, but you have to be on top of it and understand what you're allowing to influence your kids. Next, we need to follow biblical counsel. That's what that said at the very bottom. As important as it is to be alert about what's influencing your children, you can choose what influences them as well. These Sunday school teachers up down this row right here, right? Good influences on your children. Brother Samuel, right? Pastor. All men and women in this classroom that ride the bus, that drive the bus, that just interact with the children. Good influences, they need to be around them more, right? Put them in the presence of good influences. Put them under God's preaching. Make sure, obviously, you as a parent are a good influence on them, but allow them to be influenced by good things because they're going to be influenced. Make it prevalent that good things are influencing them, not just the negative things. Let's see here. I forget where I am. So I'm going to jump ahead a little bit here. When you're influencing, let's see here. I'm sorry, got a little off track. Okay, so formulation for God-given identity. I don't know why the title's not there. But there are ways that we can help formulate in little kids' minds and teenagers' minds who God wants them to be, right? That's the goal. We want them to be fully convinced and fully understanding and fully knowing of the truth that a boy born a boy is a boy, a girl born a girl is a girl. It's crazy that we have to make this a point, but we do. So we want them to be fully confident in that God knows what he's doing and who they are is who they are, even if they feel uncomfortable, right? Even if they're not sure, even if we all knew tomboy girls. We all knew effeminate boys, right? Maybe we were them growing up, but effeminate boys are still boys, Manliness is still part of who they are. Tomboy girls are still girls. There's nothing wrong with being a tomboy. There's nothing wrong with being sensitive as a man. These are okay things as long as we understand men are men, women are women. And we want to enforce that with our children. So the number one way you do that is spend time with your kids. That's the number one way. It's not the TV shows they watch or the people that they're, other people you not push them off on, but give influence over them, right? It's not any of the books that you tell them to read, it's you. There's no other influence greater from infants to teenage years and young adults than time with mom and dad, right? So God instructs us to bring up our children in the nurture and admonition of the Lord, right? That's our responsibility, specifically given to fathers. That our responsibility is to bring them up the way God would bring them up. Right? Show them the biblical design for a home. That means make sure you have a healthy marriage. Right? That means, you're going to get, I know, there's going to be arguments, there's going to be ups and downs. I get that. That's okay. We're all sinners, right? So we're all going to make mistakes. But your kids should see what a healthy marriage is because of you and your relationship with your spouse. Regardless of what you saw or didn't see, right? Doesn't matter. You know what it should look like. You want to work on it, and not saying you won't work on it, you can't work on it because you will work on it. But you know how it should be, so you display that to your children, right? What's a healthy marriage look like? Have the talk with them. The talk in quotation marks, right? The talk, probably earlier than you think, right? Now you have to be discernment of your own, and you know your kids better than anyone else. But you need to have the talk with them. If your mom and dad didn't, doesn't matter. Talk to your kids about sex. Talk to your kids about men and women. Talk to your kids about God's design for that. And again, probably earlier than you were talked to, most likely, just because it's prevalent in the world that we live in. It's everywhere. So they're going to hear it. If it's not from you, they will hear it, right? We want them to have a wholesome, pure, and godly view of the differences between men and women physically, and know that God's design for intimacy is sacred to the marriage covenant. You want your kids to know that from you. So that means you have to take the awkwardness and the uncomfortableness and have that discussion, which it's a lot easier. I've found it's a lot, and I've had it once, and we've had 2 talks in our home, right, with a 20-year-old and a 16-year-old. It is way more comfortable to talk to them when they're that age or when they're the age that is to be talked to if you talk to them all the time. Right? If they come to you with questions, if they know mom and dad will answer your questions and they'll talk to you, and you treat them like adults to a degree, like you treat them like humans. When they start to get a little older and they start to learn to obey and they start to talk and walk and they can think, treat them with respect, right? Don't just always treat them like they're 2 to let them get away with stuff like they're 2, but treat them as though they are growing and maturing. And then when the time does come, it's way easier to have that discussion with them. It's not as awkward because they're used to talking to you. They're used to talking to mom and dad about those things. But you want to give them the right perspective and God's view of what it should be. So ask for wisdom in the timing, right? It's going to be different for everybody, but don't be afraid or intimidated to talk to them about it. Talk to them about it, right? It's spending time with you should lead to those kinds of conversations. So their friends at school or their friends at even church aren't going to be the ones that are laughing at the joke and they'll be like, what's happening? And they're going to be like, well, this is what that means. And it's going to blow their minds and they're going to be so confused, right? But if you start and you have that discussion with them, they'll be like, oh yeah, mom and dad told me that already. I already know about that. This is what God says. And they may not have that maturity to have that kind of response, but that's what you want to happen in their head. So spend time with parents. It's one of the best ways to help form the identity. Distinction in dress, right? Again, Pastor talked about this on Sunday, as was mentioned earlier. Even today, the fashion industry is one of the fronts where the war on gender is raged, right? I mean, you can go into Target and you can find gender-neutral clothing, intentionally put there to be confusing and be whatever you want it to be, right? Non-binary, there's no distinction between men and women, right? Again, Pastor recently discussed this on Sunday evening, but 1 Peter 1:14-15 says, as obedient children, not fashioning yourselves according to the former lusts in your ignorance, but as he which hath called you is holy, so be ye holy in all manner of conversation. So the word fashioning in that verse is to be alike, to conform or pattern oneself, right? So it says, as obedient children, not fashioning yourselves according to the former lusts of your ignorance. So the things that you didn't know when Jesus told you and you found the truth, the way you just lived however you wanted to live, whatever was comfortable, whatever you felt like, whatever presented what you wanted to present, which was your identity or who you wanted to look like, or what attention you wanted, right? He says, don't go to that. Don't be conformed to that. Don't pattern yourself after that. Instead, pattern yourself after the one that says he's holy. God says he's holy, so be ye holy in all manner of conversation. The word conversation there is your lifestyle. So God says rather than following a pattern that is just following lust, follow a pattern that is holy. So it matters. There should be a distinction, right? What pattern? What pattern do you follow for what you wear? What do you allow your family to wear? What pattern are you following for that? Right? 1 Timothy 2:9 talks about modest apparel, modest being a covering. There should be a distinction between men and women in every area. There is equality, but there are distinctions, right, when clothing is worn. When, as we stated in previous lessons, you have boundaries and you have standards. You already have them, right? Stick to them. And I'm not even telling you what they should be. God will tell you what they should be. But God is truth. He's not different for everybody. He's the same for everybody because God is the same. So when you discern what God's saying your boundaries are for your family in dress in every area, you better make sure that you and God are good on that, right? And it doesn't just matter for my freedom and what I want and don't tell me what to do, but what we do affects what our kids see and what our kids understand. We need to help encourage them and teach them, right? When they're going to come to an age where they're not going to want to wear what you want them to wear. They're going to want to wear their own thing. Don't allow your boundaries to bend. Don't allow your standards to be bent for the 16-year-old kid that has an attitude problem. Stick to it, right? Because if you're sticking to it, it's because of what God has told you, not because it's just something you decided, right? So it matters. These are things that help determine identity. Does that mean if we all dress, I'm not saying that if we make mistakes then our kids will be like, oh, I don't know what I am. Okay, exaggeration, I understand. But how far from the line do you want to be? You want to be as close as you can and still be good? I mean, again, it goes back to what Pastor's talking about with what Jesus said on the Sermon on the Mount. How close? As long as I don't kill anybody, then I'm fine. As long as I don't physically commit adultery, then we're okay. Like, how close do we want to get? And even as Christians, I think there's a little bit of a rebellion in us, a little bit of a I'm my own person in us that we kind of try to push and it's not just in this area, it's in all areas. It's called sin, and we all deal with it. But if we want our kids to be fully, their identity is formed, biblically, these are some things we can do. There's two more things I had. Balance activities, and this kind of goes back to if you have a boy that likes, we want to avoid too much stereotyping in gender roles. I mean, men are men, women are women, but if you have a boy that likes to cook, that's okay, right? If you have a girl that likes to hunt, that's fine, right? Balance activities. The boy that likes to cook, teach him to work hard and sweat. The girl that likes to hunt, make sure she knows how to dress nice and get pretty and be feminine, right? And behave as a lady should. That's all. It's just balance. And then their friends and their associates. Know your kids' friends. Know your kids' friends' interests and what they're involved in. Check your kids' friends' Instagram profiles and their posts. Yes, stalk them. Stalk your kids' friends. Find out what they are when no one's looking. Because that's what you think when you put things online that no one's looking, right? Find out your kids, who their friends are. Know who the parents of your kids' friends are. That's important. Know the kind of home they're living in. I'm not saying go and looking in their window to see what they're watching on TV, but you can do some deducing and find out what the parents are, what the structure in their home is. Even church kids. And not all church kids my kids are not always the best influence on people around. They have bad attitudes sometimes, and they're just straight up disobedient, defiantly so, right? So not every church kid's okay, just carte blanche, right? You need to know what they're into and help them. I'm not saying write off these kids as if, Curtis, get away from me. No, be there to help them, but to make sure your kids don't just do whatever they want without any parental supervision. Know what kind of environment they're in, especially if you let them visit your friend's house without you. You better know the environment you're letting them go to, because God has given your kids to you. They are for you, his heritage, for you to steward. Don't just let them go wherever. even to a friend's house. Know where they're at, right? So all these things, God has given you your kids. They're his. He expects us to steward them and raise them for him. So fight for them. This thing is going to be bigger and bigger as the years progress. It's going to be a harder and harder battle that our kids and our grandkids will have to fight. So help them now. Pray for them. Pray for your kids. I know we say that and we do, but like intentionally pray for our kids and the battles they'll face that we can't even. I mean, think to your grandpa or great grandpa from World War II. They never ever would have guessed we would be having this conversation. Never. It would blow their minds that this is where the country is today. So what's it going to be like when 50 more years come down the road? So have those prayers, have those talks, fight for them. It's worth it. All right, we're going way too long. The kids are just...